Rex Tillerson is the CEO and chairman of ExxonMobil, the world's most valuable oil company. And sources tell CNN he is Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State. Trump, who is expected to make a formal announcement later this week, cited Tillerson's record at Exxon as one reason he'd be a good fit.
Well, in his case, he's much more than a business executive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's in charge of, I guess, the largest company in the world. He's in charge of an oil company that's pretty much double the size of his next nearest competitor. It's been a company that's been unbelievably managed. And to me, a great advantage is he knows many of the players, and he knows them well. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, for the company.
Okay, so the Kremlin, Russia, echoes Tillerson's business acumen. CNN asked Dmitry Peskov, a Kremlin spokesperson, if Tillerson is a friend of Russia, and he told us this, quote, "He's very professional. We planned a lot of mutually beneficial projects between our companies. Unfortunately, a number of them were left unrealized. As of whether he's friendly to Russia or not, there's a huge difference between being a Secretary of State and being CEO of a big corporation. We should note that just a few years ago, Tillerson was awarded Russia's Order of Friendship by Vladimir Putin." So let's talk. Susan Page is here. She's a Washington bureau chief for USA Today. Jason Johnson also joins me. He's the politics editor for TheRoot.com and political science professor at Morgan State University. So Susan, should Americans worry about this pick for Secretary of State?
Well, some Americans are expressing some concern, some important Americans, including the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, John McCain, who yesterday said he was concerned about whether Tillerson would have too much of a tilt toward Russia. And he's definitely, if Donald Trump goes ahead and nominates him for Secretary of State, we know he's going to get some scrutiny in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for confirmation. Marco Rubio, a member of that committee, expressed concerns yesterday. Rand Paul's on that committee, so is Jeff Flake. Those are some independent-minded Republican voices who I think are likely to raise questions about Tillerson's history with Russia in general and Vladimir Putin in particular.
Well, here's a concern, Jason, and I'm going to try to put it as simply as I possibly can. So Exxon, the company, wanted to build a lot of oil facilities in Russia, but then Russia invaded Crimea in the Ukraine, and U.S. imposed all of these sanctions on Russia, which killed Exxon's dreams of expanding into Russia. So now you have Tillerson and Russia. They both want to work together on these oil fields. Russia would love those sanctions lifted because its economy is in the tank, right? So in that sense, should Americans raise their eyebrows?
You know, all we got to do is add Denzel, and this is like a Manchurian Candidate situation.
Oh,
I mean, that's how bad this is. Look, I believe that the president-elect has the right to pretty much pick who he and maybe one day she wants to be in their administration. But in the wake of very clear evidence by the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI that the Russians had impact on this election, were working in concert with President-elect Trump, it's a very bad idea for national security to put someone who's not only inexperienced, but has incredibly close ties to the Russian government as Secretary of State. And here's the thing, he didn't just get the Order of Friendship from Vladimir Putin. If you look at the history of people who've received that award, they've given it to double agents. They've given it to people who have betrayed their countries in favor of Russia. I think this is a very dangerous election. I have a lot of doubts it's going to pass the Senate.
Well, so Susan, how did it go from I'm considering Mitt Romney to this Exxon CEO guy?
You know, here's the most amazing thing. Could two figures have more contrasting views of United States relations with Russia than Mitt Romney and Rex Tillerson? And they seem to be the two finalists for Secretary of State, because Mitt Romney famously in the 2012 campaign said that there was no bigger foreign policy concern than Russia. And Rex Tillerson has this history of business dealings with Russia. Now, we should note that Rex Tillerson has some allies, some people who say he would be a good Secretary of State. There are reports that Bob Gates has spoke highly of him to Donald Trump, that Bob Gates, the former defense secretary, and that Condoleezza Rice has as well. And so those are some powerful backers. But it's clear there are some concerns, especially in the wake of this ongoing investigation by the Obama administration into exactly what it was Russia tried to do during our election.
Okay, so Jason, all of that's going on because maybe there's going to be a congressional hearing. Who knows? But these four very powerful senators want one, both Democratic and Republican. Senator Mitch McConnell is supposed to make remarks at the top of the next hour, and we suspect he will say, we don't need any congressional investigations. There's nothing to this. There's no hardcore evidence. Why waste our time? And then Donald Trump says he might nominate yet another person with ties to Russia.
You know, Carol, in a historical context, this is called end of empire, right? This is how nations, hand off the baton to the next great empire. Because when you get domestic leaders who are more concerned with power than the actual sovereignty of the nation, that is a problem. Mitch McConnell was in the meeting with President Obama and the FBI director and the CIA director 2 months ago when they said, we need to have a bipartisan effort to do something about this. And he dismissed it then because it was more important that Donald Trump win than the United States not become a client state to the Russians. This is a problem. And the fact that we have a president who doesn't want to pay attention to this is a problem. And I think every American, Republican or Democrat, who cares about the sovereignty and integrity of this nation should be concerned about these connections to Russia. We've done this historically. Now we're on the receiving end. It's not a good place to be.
Okay, Susan, best guess. What do you suppose will happen? Will there be hearings? Will they take place before Donald Trump goes through his inauguration?
I don't know. I think we should give Mitch McConnell a chance to speak before we judge what it is he is saying. I do agree that the idea that Russia would try to meddle in our election is something that should be of great concern and deserves investigation. And whatever Congress decides to do, we know the administration is going ahead with an investigation. So it's not as though there is no scrutiny of this. But let's see what happens. Donald Trump is not yet president. Obviously, he's taken positions on Russia that have dismissed some of the conclusions of the intelligence agencies about what happened. But I think maybe this is an issue that is still percolating. We need to see what happens.
All right. Susan Page, Jason Johnson, thanks as always.